Good morning, everyone. My name is Gail Kruger, and I am a Microsoft Dynamics GP and AX consultant. This morning, I'm going to demonstrate the main differences between Management Reporter 2012 and FRX. I'll also be showing you some tips and tricks. We'll go through the report scheduler, and I will demonstrate the functionality of the new report viewer. For those of you who may not be aware, Management Reporter is the new version of FRX. So if you are considering upgrading and you currently have FRX, you will be migrated over to Management Reporter as part of the upgrade process. Firstly, I'll show you some of the new features in Management Reporter. So if you're familiar with FRX, you'll know that FRX consists mainly of 4 building blocks. So you have your rows, your columns, your trees, and your report catalog. So Management Reporter also has those elements. So we can see them down here on the navigation pane. We've got the row definitions, column definitions, reporting tree definitions, and report definitions. Management Reporter aligns itself more with the Microsoft Dynamics product, so the view looks similar to your GP or your AX. First, we'll start off with a row. I'm just going to open up an existing row definition, and we'll go through some of the new features. So as you can see, this looks very similar to FRX. But we do have now some editing buttons that you would find in Excel. So for your font, we can now make it bold, italic. You can change the font style and size. We can underline, indent, fill, or do different font colors. Another new button that they've added in Management Report Writer is an undo button. So now we can undo any mistakes that we make or any typos. Now, FRX didn't have this feature, so it's quite a good addition when you're doing report writing. On the row format itself, there have been a couple of columns that have been added. These were available in FRX, but they were hidden at the back, or you had to manually enter the information. So the first column that's new that you'll notice is Format Override. So Format Override is used where you want that particular row to be a percentage or to have 2 decimals where the rest of the report is rounded. So I'm just double clicking on that, and you'll see I have different options now. I can say it's currency, numeric, I can say it's a percentage, I can change the decimals, and you'll notice it shows you a sample of what it's going to look like. And if I didn't want a 0%, I wanted maybe just a dash. If it was 0, you can put that in as well. The other new column that they've added on the front is Row Modifier. So you would use Row Modifier when you need to reflect a different type of value for that particular row, which will be different from the rest of the report. So for example, if you had a profit and loss report and you had some unit accounts, which are your statistical accounts, coming onto the report. Generally, statistical accounts, you want to look at them as a year-to-date figure and not the net movement, where profit and loss, you're looking at it as a net movement. So if we're going to Row Modifier and click on the drop-down of Account Modifier, you'll see for this particular row, I could say I want to see year-to-date balance. We have some other options as well. We could do beginning balance. So if you wanted to see one account, but have a beginning balance, and then the next row down have your net movement, and then the next row down have your year-to-date, you could do that using these account modifiers. You can also pick up amounts from prior periods or periods after the period you are generating the report for, or using this account modifier. The only calculation that's changed in Management Reporter is the range. So in FRX we used to say for example, here row 80 and then the actual word to 380. So now we use the colon. Now I've actually set this particular row up as if you were doing it in FRX. So for total revenues, where I want to add each subtotal, in FRX we used to have to go to row 410 plus 860 plus 1280. With Management Reporter, however, you can actually come in, take that out, and you can start with your first row and do your range and do it to your last row. I'm just going to do it to 1220. And it will actually exclude any subtotals that it finds in that range. Another feature that's been added to all the areas within FRX, so in the rows, columns, and trees, is a validation. So if I had to make a mistake, so let's say in this particular calculation I got my row wrong, when I go to save that, it will tell me it can't save the report, it has an error. It does highlight the error on the report for you with the little red warning symbol. So then you just pick up that row and fix your error. In FRX, we'd only realize there was an error when we went to generate the report. And if you had multiple errors, you'd only pick them up one at a time as you generate each time. So this is a great feature that they've added in Management Reporter. Just a tip and trick for rows is when you do have existing rows or you want to create a new report, you can use Excel in conjunction with Management Reporter. Just going to scroll up. So for example, if I wanted to take the sales section and I wanted to change some of the text and possibly sort the text alphabetically, I can just highlight the whole range, and I'm just using my Control-C, or you could use your copy buttons up at the top or right-click copy, whichever you prefer. I'm just going to Control-C. And I've actually got Excel open on my local machine, so I've remoted into Management Reporter. So in Excel, I can come through here and I can paste from Management Reporter. Just going to expand that. So for example, I might want to put the word INC, maybe space in the dash, in front of product sales, and I'll do that for those three. So I'm just going to paste that over there. So it just gives you the flexibility of using Excel, especially if you need to go through and replace a whole lot of account numbers. You could, if you decided to redesign your chart of accounts and you needed to go and update your Management Reporter, you could put it all into FRX and have some VLOOKUPs to update your data and then just copy it all back in. Now I'm going to sort. No, I want everything sorted. By column A. When I'm finished, I'm just going to copy, go back to Management Reporter, and paste. So there we go. It's got my new wording, and now it's sorted it as I did in Excel. Another thing when you're working within the system, for example, I'm missing my C's over here. So don't forget that you can use your copy-paste once again. So I'm just going to Control-C, or you can right-click and copy, whichever you prefer. And you can highlight a whole range and paste. So you do have Excel functionality within Management Reporter. This does also exist in FRX, and you can also use Excel with FRX in the same manner that I've just used it. So those are the new features within the rows. We'll just save that one. Going into columns, columns in themselves have not changed very much, so you'll notice that you still have all the same options that you had before. The main change is in this column type. So in FRX you would have had GL for General Ledger. So they've just changed the wording. It's now FD, which is Financial Dimension. But when you choose FD, you have all the same options as you would in FRX. The other thing is with year-to-date, I think it used to be current in year-to-date or current in FRX. They've just changed it to periodic. Another column type that's been added, we did have this functionality in FRX, they've just expanded it a little bit, is attributes. So you can have an attribute column which gives you other information, normally at a transaction level for that particular row. So you can have account categories, you can have budgets, and this is just information, not the actual budget figures that you would pull in an FD column like you normally would in FRX. But you've got document, document number, dates, etc. And you've also got your transaction description if it's a journal. So you can add those attribute columns and they will be displayed when you zoom down on transaction level. That's about all that's changed in the column. Once again, just remember you can do copy and paste. So if you were doing a couple of FD columns, that you can just copy. So I just Control-C. I'll just show you right-click paste. So well, it doesn't want to do all of them now for me. But don't forget you can copy and paste across. Reporting trees haven't changed very much at all in Management Reporter. So as you can see, you still have your company, your unit name, unit description, and the dimensions. Called dimensions, pretty much it's the segments of your account number, so as you'd have currently. Right, so we'll go into the report definitions. I'll just pick up any one of these. One thing as I'm opening that, just to show you when you have, so in any report definition or row definition or column definition that we go into, you'll notice that you do have folders. So it does give you a little bit more of an ability to manage your reports. So if you do have in FRX maybe different departments that run reports, you can come in here and just right-click New Folder. So I can say, right, this is for marketing. And then I can create report definitions under marketing. So marketing knows when they go in, they can just go to the marketing folder, and that's where all their reports sit. So it does give you a little bit more flexibility in maintaining your reports. Otherwise, they do get a little bit out of hand. On the report definition itself, it's very similar. So you still have all the functionality that you generally would have, where you choose your rows, columns, your trees. Management Reporter can link into organization hierarchies, which are available if you're using Dynamics AX. Or you could just pick up a normal reporting tree. In your output and distribution, there have been a couple of changes here. You'll notice that we don't really have an option to say what kind of file do we want to create. It does have options for Excel and XPS, but it will first generate it to a central location, and then from there you can create your Excel or XPS reports, or you could print to PDF if you so wish. So the idea behind this is that you generate to this new report viewer, which I'll show you, or you can also generate to a SharePoint site. So if you are using SharePoint, you can pop it onto your intranet. Using SharePoint, you can set up email reminders. So as a report is created in a particular site or location in SharePoint, it will send off an email to the relevant person telling them that their report has been generated with a link, and then they can go in and pick up their report. For any other information on SharePoint, if you're not using SharePoint, please contact your account manager and they can assist you with that. So we can select to generate to multiple report libraries, and I will discuss report libraries in more detail when we get into the report viewer. Headers and footers are pretty much the same. They have added a new feature where now you can insert images, so you can have logos on your reports. Let's go to images. So there's an image that I've created, and it's inserted into the header. The auto text as well, it used to be down at the bottom, but we have it up at the top here, and they've just got in different sections. So this is the text that automatically changes as you generate your report, so it picks up from within the system. The settings, they've changed the processing order. So we used to, sometimes we had issues when you round in and calculations, and we'd have an option to whether you want to round first and then calculate, this was in FRX, or whether you want to do your calculations first and then round. So in Management Reporter, they've just taken it one step further, and they've actually given you a processing order. Generally, the default does work, but if you are finding that it's not working for your particular report, you can come in and change that around. They've moved some of the options to this other button down at the bottom. So this is where all your page setups and any additional options are sitting now under the other. Just a couple of tips on the report definition, and these tips that I'm telling you now are also valid for FRX, is when you're working on a particular report and you've generated the report and something looks funny in the row, so you want to go and open up that row for that report. In FRX, you used to have 3 little buttons running across the top where you could actually open the row. With Management Reporter, they've put the buttons next to row or column, and if I had tree, select a tree, then I've got a button next to the tree. So if you want to open up that row for that report, you don't need to go back to row definitions and find that row. You simply click on the button next to the row, and it will open up the row for you. The other button that's quite handy, and it's also in FRX, is this button next to Generate. So that button will open up the last report that you generated on this report definition. So sometimes you generate a report, and if it's got trees and lots of different units in the trees, it may take a little while to run, and by accident you close it and you think you need to go and regenerate it. You don't really. You can just click on that little button and it will open up the last report that was generated. Those are my tips and tricks for the main elements that you had in FRX that, and the new features in Management Reporter. So I'd like to move on to a new feature in Management Reporter, and that is report schedules. So for report schedules, these are where you actually set the Management Reporter to generate the reports automatically for you. Now, Management Reporter, the major difference between Management Reporter and FRX is actually in the back end. So as a user, you don't always see that. But FRX used to be installed locally on your machine or on a terminal server, depending on your environment, and all the processing would just happen on that system. all your reports and columns would be stored in Access database on the server, which for security, and I did have a client who actually lost all their reports because that Access database was deleted. So what they've done in the back end now is Management Reporter works the same as your Microsoft Dynamics applications, where you have a server installation of Management Reporter, and then you have client installations. So you need a server environment now. It cannot be just installed locally on a machine in its entirety. So you will have your local client installed, but it will be looking at the server to do all the processing, which then allows it to do the scheduling, because the server will do the scheduling for you, not your machine. So your machine can be switched off when you go home, and the reports will still generate. Right, so I'll show you. For report schedules, you can either run it for one report, or you can have a group of reports. So I wanted to show you the group of reports. So I'd first go into report groups, and I'm going to do a new report group. So first I need to go in, and I just need to add, and it will give me a list of all my reports. So I'm just going to pick up a couple. I'll do balance sheet, cash flow, and an income statement, for example. So I've just held down my control button, and I've selected multiple at once. Now the option down at the bottom is just, do I want to override? So each report, you've set up the library that it needs to go to. So this is just if I wanted to override it, which I don't want to do. So there's my report group. So I'm going to save it, and I'm going to just call it monthly reports. Okay, so there's my monthly reports. Now I go through to my report schedules, and I keep, for FRX, whenever you clicked on something, something would pop up, so I keep expecting something to pop up, which you may as well, but you need to click on New. So this is where, as I said, you can run it for an individual report, or you select a report group, which I'm going to do a report group. So I've got monthly reports. I'm just saying this is active, so if I decide that for a particular month I don't want to run those reports automatically, you can just come through here and untick that active. So you don't need to delete all your settings. The active will just let it run or not. You can also set up permissions. And this is for this particular owner, the permissions they have on the company. So generally you'd want to run this as an administrator. And then you can set up your frequency. So when you want to start the report, what time do you want to run the report at? Is it monthly, daily? So I could say monthly, intervals of 1 month. What day of the month do you want? Or a relative day of the month if you want the first day of the month, things like that. Then you can have also your end by or set number of occurrences. So once you've set this up and this is active, this will start running on the start recurrence date and time. Just talking about permissions, just wanted to touch a bit on security. So if you upgrade from FRX to Management Reporter, your licenses will come over as well. You do get the same number of user licenses you do for FRX. I just wanted to let you know there are different types of roles. So you'll notice in this test I've got administrator. So administrators can go through, they can create reports, they can generate, they can also administer the securities, folders, set up permissions on folders and things like that. You've got designer. Designer would be somebody that you want them to be able to go in and create new reports and generate, but you don't want them to go do any of the system setup or maintenance. Then we also have generator, and a generator, they can purely come in and just pick up the report definitions and generate the report. They can't go and add or modify anything. You can also get separate licenses for the viewer. So if you do have any questions around licenses, and especially if you are upgrading, just contact your account manager and they'll be able to assist you with those questions. Right, so let's go into the library. So you can access the library as a separate product. The other way you can get in, which I'm just going to do for now, is pick up a report. And I'm just going to open up the last report that was generated. So this was that trial balance. So I did want to show you how the logo comes through. So this was the one that had the logo. Right, if I go into Report Library, so this is where your reports are going to generate to, unless you've said go to SharePoint. Now in the library, you can once again set up folders. So for here, I've got departments. So under departments, I've got the different folders. For each folder, you can set up permissions. So you can say who has got access to view, edit, create in that folder. Management Reporter uses your network users, so you would just be able to pick up your normal network users. I'll just show you with the trial balance how in its output it's actually saying generate to library, financials, and 2012. So in the library, that trial balance would go to financials and 2012, and there sits the trial balance. So you can set up each report to generate to a specific folder that specific people have permissions to. It can also generate to multiple folders. So if you wanted it to go to Department Finance and also Financials 2012, it can do that. If you've accessed the report viewer through your Start menu and just open straight into the report viewer, you can click on a report and you can right-click, and there's an option called Show Versions. And this will actually show you every time that particular report was generated. So if I wanted to see my trial balance as at April, I can just select the April one and open. So you don't need to rename your report each time. If it's running on a set monthly schedule, you'll be able to use that Show Versions to be able to open your reports. Right, I wanted to open up no. Got too many reports open now. Another new feature with the viewer is that you can add comments. Now these comments cannot be deleted by other users. They can only be deleted by the person who created them. So for example, I can see here next to product sales there's a little icon, and if I just move my cursor over, it actually says there are comments at another level of the report. So if I double click on product sales, which is the same as your drill in FRX, and there's a comment. So if I click on there, I can see the who knows comment. One thing with the viewer, as opposed to the old drill down viewer, is if I want to go back, there is a back button. So I can just go back up a level. So if I wanted to add a comment onto service revenues, I can just click on the plus here to add comment. I can click on new comment up at the top, or you could even right click and add comments. So 3 ways, whichever way you prefer. You can add a comment and just say, please review figure, whatever you want to add. These comments can be printed out with your report, and that will always stay there. So every time I open up that version of the report, I'll see that comment. You can, only an administrator though, can actually copy these comments to a newer version of the report. So if you've got comments that you've added for 1 month and then you generate the new month and you want those comments to go forward, you can copy them forward. Another feature that the viewer has is a chart feature or graph feature. So what it allows you to do is you can highlight the first thing you've got to do is you've got to select a row or column. Now it's not just a matter of clicking, you've actually got to right click and say select row. So once you've selected the row, now you can just use your shift and your down arrows. And I'll select that whole, all of those. And you'll notice I've got these graphs up at the top. So I can say, right, do a column, and then it shows me a quick graph of those figures. If I like that graph, I can click on the little dock button or the little pin, and it will come over into this comment section here. And I can always view it. So whenever I go out of that report, so I'll just close that report. Go back into my library and just open up the same report. So you'll see there I've got a comment on that level, and I've got my graph. So I can go in and have a look at that graph. From this viewer, you can export to Excel, just clicking on your Excel button. You can generate an XPS document, which is similar to a PDF. It's also not editable. You can print. So if you did have Adobe installed, you could print it to PDF. And you can also email a link to that report. So if you wanted to email a link to somebody saying, here's your report, then they'll pick it up with that report. As I mentioned before, you can also generate to SharePoint, so to your intranet, and then just using your SharePoint functionality, email the managers that their report's available, and they go and pick up their own reports. So this draws a close to the demonstration of the new features and tips and tricks of Management Reporter. So thank you for attending, and if you have any questions around Management Reporter, any of the features that you've seen today, or around upgrading and what the process of upgrading your reports would be, please forward those to your account manager to respond to, and they'll respond to you in a timely manner. Thank you for attending, and hope you have a great day further.